Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Joe Gorman. I'm from Cisco, so I am acutely aware I'm standing in between you and lunch. So we will keep it to half an hour. I will try and allow some time for questions at the end. If I don't, please come past the stand. We're upstairs and we'll be here until 3 o'clock, the event anyway. So I'm going to share some slides with you. I'm hopefully no more than 20 minutes. In fact, I definitely won't be any more than 20 minutes. I will try and go through as quick as possible and highlight some key points. And I'll come on to the agenda in a second. And then for 10, 12 minutes, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Ross, and we're going to bring this whole world of SASE to life. And hopefully the penny will drop on what it actually can do for a digital journey, whether it's digital transformation or any one of the steps along the way. But yeah, usually when you see these things, it kind of does bring it to life. So in terms of agenda, what is SASE? It's a fairly new concept, and I will explain that, why it's important. I'll touch on some of the kind of key drivers that are pushing them. It's becoming top of mind for a lot of for people. What it looks like in terms of the service framework, what we actually get for this. And I want to spend a bit of time on the considerations, right? Because I'm sure some of you are on a digital transformation journey just now. And my experience has been the networking and often the security becomes a bit of an afterthought. And just to give you a bit of insight, I've been in Cisco since 2010. I left right at the start of the pandemic, actually. I was working my notice when the first lockdown happened. And I joined Google Cloud. And I lived and breathed digital transformation for the best part of 2 years. And most of last year, I worked with one particular client who completely on that journey from cradle to grave. And because of my heritage in the Cisco world, I continually ask, what about the networking? When can we speak to your service provider? And it's like, don't worry about it. And once they signed the contract to go Google Cloud, right, which it's multi-million pounds of revenue, we got the green light to go and speak to the service provider. Lo and behold, they never had interconnects into Google, and they weren't going to get them for 9 months. Right now, that customer's business case was top weighted at the front end of all the cost savings that were going to be had. That delay straddled 2 fiscal years, and they'd already signed a contract. They were paying for a Google service, and they were struggling to get the workloads moved out into the Google. So it brought it to life for me about the importance of networking, getting that architectural principle up front and baked into your operating model and your considerations. And I'll mention this as well. Anyway, I came back to Cisco. I rejoined in January. They set up this SASE team, and with that experience, it's put me in good stead. So what is SASE? So SASE is a term that was coined by Gartner in 2019. It's a horrendous acronym, right? But we didn't create it. We'll blame Gartner for this, right? Secure Access Service Edge. Basically, it means the convergence of cloud networking and cloud security into a single subscription, consumed through a single console. And that's what Ross is going to show for 10 minutes. He's going to bring that to life and what it is. A lot of our customers are on a SASE journey already. They've bought the security elements, they've got SD-WAN, or they're doing some other remote access for the hybrid workers. So maybe that's not, the unified is not the way to go. So there is 2 tracks, a la carte, and the unified is how they define it. But that's the definition. I promise this isn't going to be a Cisco sales pitch, by the way. I'm going to talk at generic levels about SASE as well. I should have maybe clarified that up front. But just to give you, why is this important? Well, there's a number of things that are changing in our industry and in our society, and the pandemic's brought it all to the fore. So if you think about a number of traditional organisations that I've dealt with in the past, that were on, they had their plans for digital transformation 5, 6, 7 years, and then the pandemic hits. And where they're having most of their business, their revenue generated is coming through their traditional means, their bricks and mortar, etc., their retail outlets. That's shut down overnight. And then there's the mad dash to get everything into the cloud and get their applications modernised and be able to take orders online. So those 5, 6 and 7 year digital strategies become 5, 6 and 7 months. Right? And I can think of one car retailer that I've known for a long time, 250 forecourts. Most of their business is done through the forecourts, right? Negotiating with their, their suntanned and white tea sales guys, right? But that was gone overnight, and there was panic stations for them as well. And the problem with that is you're going head first into these cloud vendors, hyperscalers, signing up to contracts, knowing that you're not doing the due diligence that you'd normally do. And then it's the common pitfalls. How do you get back out? You know, you get a gun to the head as well when it comes to renewal of the contract. So all this stuff, right? And this is where SASE can help to a certain degree. Remote workers as well, right? So, you know, we're all getting used to working from home now. It's baked into our lifestyle. It's no longer just a nice to have. It's actually, we're used to it now. How are you equipping those users to do that, right? You know, they're on the move, they're working from home. You might still have a full VPN link back into the data center only to go back out, right? It doesn't make sense. You know, give them something that's going to enhance their day-to-day life, make them more productive, and actually enhance the customer experience. The customer experience is vital here to ensure security is maintained. You don't want to be putting enforcing a security model that's going to slow down their work. They're going to jump out of that and go direct to the internet, and bad actors infiltrate, right? So the users are putting a model in place that can accommodate them, and they can embrace as well. And also we get the IoT devices everywhere. But applications, hyper dispersed, right? Where, you know, the cloud's been out for 13 years now, right? It's well established, but it's starting to evolve now. You're starting to see more players coming in. Oracle, I never thought would be encroaching in the big three space. They're actually starting to do that now. The latest market share figures are showing that. But then you've got Salesforce.com, who've been acquiring for years now. Likewise, ServiceNow, they're starting to encroach in each other's space. Then you look at the SaaS world, right? That's exploding. If you look at the SaaS players, even just in marketing alone, there's about 2,000. Multiply that with the number of line of business functions you've got, you get thousands of potential solutions there that will just get landed on IT operations to make that happen, you know, bring it on board. And this is what SASE can do. Take a step back, look at those architectural principles around networking, security, cloud delivered, and bake it into your operating model, and just make that seamless transition to the digital world that bit easier and that bit less risky. And also call it the perimeter, right? Our traditional perimeter's changed. It's disappeared effectively. You know, if you think of a branch that had 200 users, you've now got 200 users that are potentially working from home. How do you get insights in how that service is performing? They're working from home, they're connecting to a digital service that could be anywhere in Europe or the US. How are you getting an insight on how that's performing? Especially when you start having problems and you start getting users screaming down the phone. You know, it's there must be a better way of doing it, and there is. So what does it look like? Just check my time here, make sure I'm okay. This is what the cloud service looks like, and there's a lot in here. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about it, but basically that box there is a cloud delivered service from the SASE vendors. Obviously I work for Cisco and we do that, but you know, you're getting a full rich secure service there. The benefit of that is you get no gaps in your security portfolio. Again, it's cloud delivered, so you can bake it into your operating model. And SD-WAN as well, the connectivity to connect these service edge. This is your two use cases here. Secure edge, your offices, your IoT environment, and then your secure remote worker. You know, being able to give them a connectivity into this bubble that's highly secure and gets them where they need to be, which is here, right? Without having to traverse in the old model and, you know, traditional setup and all the pitfalls of that. What I will call out here, just in the interest of time, is this middle mile optimization. This is where you got the likes of Equinix and your Megaport. These guys between them have got 150 data centers around the globe. They've made the investments in those interconnects, right? The case in point I made at the start. They've got all the major hyperscalers and the SaaS vendors for that matter. So connecting, stretching your connectivity fabric into there, and then minimizing that hop count into the cloud service that you need to get to, has a performance benefit, has a customer experience benefit as well. But there is one thing I want to highlight here also. How do you get visibility when problems occur in this world, right? So when Gartner came out with their definition, it was all about networking and security. There is a third pillar that you need to consider, and that's observability, right? So I'll go back to the case, the use case where you get the home worker using their home broadband, connecting into maybe an AWS service in Frankfurt, right? They phone up the help desk and they're screaming down the phone, you know, this AWS is crap, I can't get my application, blah, blah, blah. With observability, you're able to determine, well, it's actually your broadband that's rubbish. You know, that's the level of granularity you want to get to. Or, you know, the broadband's fine, the AWS service is fine. What's happening in between? What's happening with those third-party transit carriers? Being able to get that insight is important because the traditional perimeter's gone now. The tooling that you had inside your data center to get those red flags is not fit for purpose. This is a different operating model, similar to what you'll be doing in your cloud service, but we do that end to end. And that's something to consider when you're looking at your operating model for your digital strategy. And I'm just highlighting the point here that there's 3 pillars to bake in: networking, security, observability, single subscription, consumed through a single console. That's your SASE proposition. All the SASE vendors are doing it, right? It's those three pillars to consider. Just considerations I want to highlight. Where did that not come up? Yeah. I'll just quickly go through these and then I'll pass over to Ross. These are the benefits, right? Cost, obviously, right? You know, you're moving from a CapEx cost to a subscription cost. That's the obvious one. Think about the operating cost though, right? Traditionally networking, you go and buy bit, or you go through a procurement exercise, you go and buy bits to put in a data center, you've got to feed and water them, right? You've got your Frankenstein monster of security point solutions. It does away with all that, right? You're getting a complete security end to end. You get a cloud delivered networking, cheaper, simpler, and it gives you that more fleet of foot. For the digital services that you're onboarding, you can see today, but more importantly, all that stuff that's coming down the line, how are you going to have an operating model that can allow you to quickly adopt them? And this is what SASE will give you. Just take a step back and look at these architectural principles, put them in place, and it will enable your digital service. It is cloud delivered, as I mentioned. Customer experience is paramount. So for the things that I mentioned, they're on the road, they're on the move, they're working from home, they're in the office, right? Ensuring that their productivity is maintained, they're getting the right performance, and it's remaining secure. There's no appetite for them to leave the corporate policy and go and directly connect to the internet. This is a key thing on that experience. And the world is going hybrid and multi-cloud. You're probably already doing it. You probably have a hyperscaler. You're using SaaS services. You're using on-prem. You know, that's only going to continue. But embed it into your operating model is a key message here. You may be on a journey just now. You may have a partner who's delivering your cloud strategy and implementing that. But they might not be, you know, networking and security might not be core to them. And that's what I found in my experience. It was another partner that you need to consider to do that. Now, if I look at who I'm partnering with today, we've got to stand with Sword Group. It's a case in point of what's probably going to happen in the marketplace. Sword Group are a professional managed services organisation who focus primarily on the digital transformation space. Ping networks, networking and security black belts. Sword acquired Ping in January, and now they've got that missing bit of the jigsaw complete. That will continue to happen in the whole professional services industry, and I can start to see it already with some of the traditional cloud professional services players. They're skilling up in that whole networking thing. So that's it for me in terms of the slides. I'm just going to hand over to Ross now, who is going to bring to life this whole SASE world. We're not daft enough to do a live demo for the gremlins to come out, so we've got some videos that Ross has created and he's going to talk through. But it's a Secure Connect. It's actually, you know, those architectural principles combined, and we're going to show you a couple of the use cases. Now, this is version 1.0. Like I said at the start, this is a very, very new thing, the SASE world, right? So, but it'll give you an idea of the direction of travel that the industry's going with this. So thank you very much for your time. Ross, I think I need to give you this.
Thank you. All good. Cool. Thank you, Joe. So I'll just move. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'll be doing a demonstration. So 10, 12 minutes on the Secure Connect offerings. So just to make clear, as Joe said at the start, we do have 2 offerings. So one being the unified solution and one being a la carte. So what I'm showing today is the unified solution. And the example that we're using, we'll use Meraki networks along with remote users. So right now, it'll be most seamless for Meraki networks. However, as time goes on, this will also integrate with our Cisco networks and also, other types of networks that you might have. So I'll just start the video here. So the way I'm actually going to work through this is a bit of a checklist. So we've got 5 clear points just to separate the video into what we're actually trying to achieve. So number 1 of these points is onboard sites. So how can we actually have our branch offices, which have so in this example, Meraki equipment, taking advantage of that Meraki SD-WAN, as Joe mentioned, for our secure edge use case, where we have these branch sites. How can we actually get these onto Secure Connect platform? So you can see here's the overview page, which is really the launch point. So every checkpoint will start at this same page where you can see. So we can play around with the timescale, see different security events, different users, sites. So we're bringing together these things which traditionally would be on different dashboards. So if I go into manage sites here, you can actually see that I'll have 2 sites currently in the dashboard. So that'll be an East Bay branch and a US branch. So we can see they both have Meraki SD-WAN. So we can see across the last 7 days, the East Bay branch has been fully online, whereas the US branch had 5 days of offline and 2 days of online. So we're getting some health statistics here as well. So every branch is going to be assigned a cloud hub. So these cloud hubs are really our regional data centers where we connect into the platform. So we have a US cloud hub and an EU cloud hub, and you can see we have a primary, secondary type connection. At the top right, I can connect to a new Meraki network. So I click Connect Sites, Meraki Networks. We can see we have an EU branch at the bottom here, which is unassigned. So that's a Meraki Networks, which currently is not assigned to a cloud hub. So just on a couple clicks, I can assign that. So as it's an EU branch, it'll go straight into an EU cloud hub. And we then have that selection of either London or Frankfurt at the moment as the primary cloud hub. So as this is a demo environment, it won't add in, but in reality, that would then become that third site, underneath the US branch. So similarly, if you wanted to add in further cloud hubs, we can say manage cloud hubs, add cloud hub, and again, so in this example, I'm adding in an East Coast branch. So the other US one was LA Palo Alto on the West Coast, and I could add one in for New York Ashburn. So as time goes on, this is really going to grow across the globe. So right now in version 1, it's operating in the US and the EU. However, over time, this is going to cover the whole globe using Cisco's footprint we already have, using our umbrella data centers. So that's really as simple as that. So checkpoint 1 was how do we onboard sites. And you've really seen there, that was a case of a few clicks, pick your site and assign it to a cloud hub. So the second point is looking at users. So these users that aren't actually in our offices. And this really is focused on the remote access type conversation. So this will move on in a second, and we'll actually see how we can get straight away in-depth details on our users and what groups they're part of. So starting on that same launch page again, for the Secure Connect dashboard, you'll see the users section on the left-hand side. So I'm jumping in to see further information here. So we can see we have 59 users and 3 of these are online. So as well as this, we can see what groups they're part of. So domain users being everyone, and then we have these sub-departments, so things like contractors, sales, engineering. And this is all fully pulling through from your Active Directory. So no matter what Active Directory you're using, that could be Okta, Azure, any of these. So you'll actually see here in Umbrella the different integrations that we've got. So the AD users and the AD groups are fully pulled through. And we can see here the different integrations. So here we can see our Active Directory connector has pulled this information. So it could be Okta, it could be G Suite, all these different Active Directories you might be using. So you can see here, all this information is being shown in Secure Connect, but it's coming straight from your Active Directory in a few clicks. So that's really user information in groups pulled through into Secure Connect. And following this, we can actually use our remote access setup. So you'll see here, this acts as a pretty simple checklist to get these remote users actually online onto the platform. So step 1 is to configure a remote access. So a bit like our sites, we actually assign these remote users to regional hubs. So you'll see here in this version 1, we have 4 set up in the US and 4 set up in Europe. So you can see here that they're all provisioned, and you can see these are spread across the US and Europe. So that's really step 1 of the checklist, is having these locations set up for our remote users to jump into that nearest point of presence and get a security policy that we want to apply to them. So the second point is then to bring any sites online, which I've shown for Meraki networks. And if you did have non-Meraki networks, even in this example, it is still doable. Won't be quite as seamless, but that's something that will come in time. I'll come back to creating policies. We've onboarded our users. That was using the Active Directory. And then that last point is how we actually apply this to the endpoint devices. And that's using our AnyConnect client. So that's our VPN client, which sits on the end device. And it does a lot more than just VPN, but we all have that on our laptops. And that's how the user actually connects into those remote access locations. Once you've done all this, you really get that remote access dashboard. You've got all your endpoint locations. You can see how many connected users you've got, and you can also configure any compliance criteria. So that's step 2. We've onboarded sites, we've onboarded users, and now that we have those users with their endpoint devices, we actually want to look at how we can create profiles to set minimum requirements for these devices. So things like operating systems, browsers, and applying these to particular geographical locations. So we'll see here again, this is a case of a few clicks. So we can go to endpoint posture profile up here. So we've got two existing profiles. I could edit one of these, or I could add a new one. So in this example, I'll just add one called Ross's new profile. And this really has a default deny rule attached to it. So anything that I'm not selecting means that it won't be allowed. So I'm saying it has to be Mac OS, it has to be iOS, you have to use Safari, and I'm going to apply this rule to Northern Europe, I think is what's been selected here. But this could get granular down to individual countries, custom lists of countries, anything you like really. So we can review and save. And even if I edit these, I can go down to even more granular to specific versions, the latest version, and deciding how long you give your employees to really update, which I think we've all seen on our devices where we're pushed to update. So I could then save that, and that's me created that endpoint posture profile to apply to these devices. So that's really one side of the conversation is the users, the sites. But we also want to look at the applications. Like Joe mentioned, we now have public apps, we've got private apps. We want to make it really seamless how we can apply policy to both of these. So probably the most simplest part of the conversation is the public applications, because using Cisco Umbrella, we've done a lot of the hard work under the hood. So you'll see here, when I go to apply a policy in Umbrella, we've fully categorized thousands of SaaS applications into these predefined groups. So we can then apply common policy to many of these. So you can see lots of examples here. So there's hundreds and thousands of apps under each of these. So we can just apply policy in one click to all of these applications in the one go. So what I'm showing an example of here is a gambling policy which we have set up in this demo environment. So you can see when I edit this rule set, we actually check the destinations, and you can see that the destination applied is gambling. So all these different gambling sites, applications we're used to seeing are instantly blocked using this one rule, and you don't have to worry about specific applications, policies for specific applications. So part of the problem, which we're all probably aware of, is that we don't have that same level of categorization for our private applications as we do for these SaaS apps. So what Secure Connect actually does, which is clever, is that we set up these private applications. So I could add a new application here, and I then either select either network access, which is more your traditional VPN, or browser access, which is starting to get away from VPN and looking at policy we can apply. But what we then do is group these private apps together. So they could be apps that perform similar business functions, similar users might access them, and we then create these private app groups, a bit like you just seen in Umbrella. So it could be patient apps, medical apps in this example. So what we've shown is our private apps are now in groups. So we want to apply this browser access, which means we're getting away from the VPN and looking at how we can actually access these applications, using just the browser and not having to be on that VPN. So we'll see here how we can actually apply this policy to particular application groups, particular users, and particular profiles. So inside browser access in the demo here, so we can actually see that we've got a default deny rule at the bottom. So that means that any application which doesn't meet these rules above is going to be denied. So there's 3 different scenarios we've set up for browser access. So we can see the first rule, so action. So we're going to allow anything that meets this. So what users and groups? So the first one we have 2 users, second one we have 2 users, and in the third one we've said all doctors. So any user that falls within that group. Additionally, the app group, so it could be an individual app or it could be a group of apps that applies to this. And also we have our endpoint posture. So does their endpoint actually meet that profile that we set up earlier? So if these 3 things are all met, then go ahead, you can access through the browser without being on VPN. So in this example here, we want to focus on this Bill Shredder character. So we can see that he is allowed access to the patient portal as long as the endpoint posture meets it. He is allowed access to the finance portal, but if you check the users, he's actually not a doctor, so he wouldn't be allowed access to the MediPortal access. So let's actually do a wee demo of how this works. So if we show an example of Bill accessing the the patient portal, which you did have access to. So we can see the patient portal apps there. We can edit it. We can actually see there's just one app in there called patient portal. So I'm looking for that on the list of apps. I think it's on the next page. We can see patient portal there. So if I actually try and access that application, remember that this is a private app which would be hosted in your own data center. So we're trying to recreate that feeling of a public application, even though it's hosted in your own data center. So I'm using his credentials in the demonstration. It'll then push us for a multi-factor authentication push. In Cisco's case, we're going to use Duo. It could be other multi-factor that you use using your SSO. So we'll click the button on the phone, however we want to push it, and it then gives us access to the patient portal. Whereas if we go back to browser access, as I mentioned before, Bill was not a doctor. So what that means is that he should not have access to the medical apps. So now that we've done that single sign-on, in this demo environment, we're logged in as if we're Bill working day to day on your laptop. So I'll do the same. I'll find that external URL for the medical app, and we'll actually see how it will block access based on that rule which we've set up. So I've went to that external URL. It pushes through the SSO as we just logged in. We do the multi-factor, but this time it's blocked based on that browser policy which we had set up. So a bit like you would have set up an umbrella for public apps, you're really recreating that same level of group policy based on your private apps, which really brings together the whole conversation in terms of users on one side having that policy, accessing particular applications. So I think that kind of brings it all together, and that completes the checklist. And you can really see there it's all seamless. It's all just a few clicks, and it's really pretty powerful message to be able to do that with your applications and users, regardless of location. So that's me. That's the video done.
That was almost bang on time. Is there any questions anybody has before we finish up? I am conscious that we are standing in the way of but like I said at the start, if you want to come past the stand, we can have a proper chat. We can do that after lunch. Thanks very much for your time. Cheers.